does and could this happen? 2 National Guard, one now dead, the other clinging to life, both gunned down in broad daylight 2 blocks from the White House. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem will be joining me to discuss this. She has new information about the Afghan man arrested and charged. Secretary Noem will be here in just a moment. Also ahead, did Secretary of War Pete Hegseth go too far, or is it fake news? The White House responds to a report that Hegseth issued an order to kill people on a suspected narco boat who, after the first military strike and still alive, were hanging onto the boat, and the military was then ordered to strike again, killing them. Plus, she was President Trump's personal lawyer. Now she has been disqualified from her new job. We're going to tell you why Alina Habba has been rejected by a federal appeals court to serve as the United States Attorney in New Jersey. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on trial for more than 5 years. He wants a pardon. President Trump agrees.
This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
And do not forget our outrage of the day. Today, it's a teen allegedly murdered by her father and her brothers. Why? Prosecutors believe she was killed by her own family for behaving too Western. But first, President Trump is standing by as Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. On Friday, the Washington Post reported that back on September 2, the United States conducted a strike on an alleged drug smuggling boat in the Caribbean. The first strike left 2 survivors, according to the Washington Post, which cites 2 people with direct knowledge of the operation. A follow-up strike, a second one, was then conducted, and it killed the 2 survivors. This is an effort to comply with Secretary Hegseth's orders to kill everybody on board. Now, Secretary Hegseth is denying this report, posting on X, quote, "As usual, the fake news is delivering more fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory reporting to discredit our incredible warriors fighting to protect the homeland," end quote. Yesterday, President Trump was asked about the strikes. Here's the president.
I don't know anything about it. He said he did not say that, and I believe him 100%.
You don't know if there was
You're talking about the 2 men?
The second strike to kill the 2 men.
No, he said he didn't do it. He said he never said
Would
that.
you be okay with that if he did?
He said he didn't do it, so I don't have to make that decision.
Both the Republican chair and the Democrat ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee are now demanding answers. On Saturday, Republican Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker and Democratic Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed voted to conduct vigorous oversight into the strikes. And this afternoon, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt was asked about the strikes. Here is the press secretary.
President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated. And I would just add one more point to remind the American public why these lethal strikes are taking place. Because this administration has designated these narco-terrorists as foreign terrorist organizations. The president has a right to take them out if they are threatening the United States of America.
Republican South Carolina Congresswoman, member of the House Armed Services Committee, Nancy Mace, joins me. Nice to see you, Congresswoman. And first, can you confirm that there were actually 2 strikes on this single boat?
From media reports, yes, we've heard that there were 2 strikes on this boat. What was astounding to me, Greta, and thank you for having me on today, is that we have people in the press, on social media, even elected members of Congress, who are defending drug narco terrorists, who are bringing lethal drugs, over 500,000 pounds, 500 million pounds of drugs into this country, and defending their behavior when the president has designated these people as narco terrorists. They need to be taken out so these drugs stop coming into the United States of America.
Okay, don't get me wrong. I do not want narco-terrorists bringing drugs into this country. Where I have pause is this. I do know, for instance, that Hamas uses human shields, and I do know that that these narco-terrorists are just as ugly and dirty as Hamas. And what concerns me is if there were 2 that were left alive. Do we know they were narco-terrorists? Could they be human shields? Could they be Venezuelan fishermen? We don't know, and it's sort of the job of Congress to be oversight to answer those questions for us. I mean, in all likelihood, probably you're right, but that's not the way we proceed with how we investigate when our military has taken action that has resulted in loss of life.
Certainly, there are oversight provisions and oversight investigations, both in the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives, which is the duly responsible role of Congress on both sides of the aisle. But I do not believe that Secretary Hegseth of the Department of War would authorize this type of action if they were not narco terrorists. And so I support Secretary Hegseth. I support President Trump in their efforts to derail drug terrorism coming into the United States. I'm 100% on board with that.
I do not think that Secretary Hegseth would, deliberately, intentionally, but mistakes are made, and that's for the very reason. I mean, look, it's like the purpose of this, according to Carolyn Leavitt, the press secretary, was to destroy the boat and eliminate the threat. Well, I think they destroyed the boat with the first strike. They were just too clean to the side. I mean, the boat was grossly disabled. The threat probably is eliminated with two guys hanging to the side of a boat. So we really had achieved it, and so my question is, where do we stop? Do we finish it off and finish these people off, or at that point do we do something else? I'm not for narco terrorists coming into this country or poisoning our streets.
Well, I'm for making sure that they are eliminated. I mean, I'm for the death penalty for child rapists. I'm for the death penalty for murderers. I'm for the death penalty for people who bring drugs and narcotics into this country, who want to weaken America and hurt our families and hurt our citizens. So I'm all on board with eliminating the threat of narco terrorism entirely, and I want to thank President Trump for doing that.
Well, I thank the President Secretary for eliminating all narco trafficking coming into this country. But I just want to know, why it was we got these other two, and if they're narco terrorists, it may even be a missed opportunity to have captured them and gotten a lot of information out of them, intelligence that would help us in our war against narco terrorism.
Well, potentially, but that's up to the Secretary of War. That's up to Secretary Hegseth to determine that. He made the decision. He made the determination, and his soldiers, his generals did that and eliminated these individuals. And I fully support it. I mean, we need to send the message very clearly to countries outside of the United States. If you are coming to the United States of America to do us harm, you will not succeed under President Trump. And that's what I'm seeing here. And quite frankly, I feel safer for it. And I pray for the families who have people in their family who are addicted to drugs. Our family is no different than any others. We've seen this kind of thing. And we want to eliminate what is coming into our country from Venezuela, from China, from everywhere, really, and doing great harm to the citizens of America.
Well, Venezuela is terrible. I've been investigating human trafficking down there for a long time. It is absolutely outrageous. And I'm for getting these terrorists completely, but I also don't want to jeopardize our values that once we've achieved our mission's goal, which was to destroy the boat and stop the narco terrorists, it is incumbent upon us to look and see if we're doing this that is sort of consistent with our values, and it's not just to kill everybody in sight until we have the whole story.
And that seems fair and reasonable, and I trust President Trump. I trust Secretary Hegseth. I trust those who were involved who made the decision, I believe, the right call. I'm for eliminating anyone that wants to bring harm to an American citizen via any kind of terrorism, whether they're talking narco terrorism, terrorism from the Middle East. I mean, we just saw an attack from a terrorist on two National Guardsmen. One died, Sarah died on Friday, and the other is fighting for his life right now. And so I'm for eliminating all threats in order to ensure the safety of American citizens. I'm all of the above on this, and I don't think it could happen soon enough.
And I agree on the threats. I mean, that's 2 blocks from the White House, 2 blocks from where I work. What happened here, and two innocent people on the streets trying to help keep us safe. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, always nice to see you. Thank you.
Greta, it's great to see you as always. Thank you for the tough questions.
Thank you. Coming up, an Afghan man sitting in jail, the man that Congresswoman just talked about, charged with killing in broad daylight 1 or 2 blocks from the White House, a woman National Guard member, and he's charged with assault with intent to kill another Guard member. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem joins me next when The Record continues.
From the moment Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, Newsmax was there. We have some major breaking news. Israel launches strikes, preemptive strikes, almost 4 in the morning.
Israel has decided enough's enough.
What happened tonight was inevitable.
Something just caught my attention of it sounds like afterburners overhead.
Putting multiple explosions across the capital, Tehran.
I'm in a shelter now. There's 6 of us.
Benjamin Netanyahu has come out to make a statement.
Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship. We have risen like lions to defend ourselves.
Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Whenever the biggest news breaks, Newsmax is there for you because we're real news for real people.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching, even moving better.
Nature's Blend works because it's freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, they all get right into your dog's body.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
For a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV.
$600 a year. If you're 50 plus, you could save up to that much by switching 2 unlimited lines from big wireless to consumer cellular. And we've got the same reliable coverage. So why don't you pick up your phone while I take this hammer and... I can't feel my feet. If you're over 50, get 2 unlimited lines for $30 each. And right now, get your second month free. Call Consumer Cellular.
There are new questions about the vetting of Afghans who resettled in the United States after the U.S. withdrew on August 30th, 2021. As you know, an Afghan man has been arrested for shooting 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C. One of those soldiers has died. The other remains hospitalized. Today, we got an update on that guardsman's condition.
Andrew remains in serious condition. We did have some positive news that we were told that Andrew was asked if he could hear the nurse who asked the question to give a thumbs up, and he did respond. And we were told that he also wiggled his toes. So we take that as a positive sign.
Today, the White House also said more could have been done to avoid the shooting by better screening.
The Trump administration is now actively re-examining all of the Afghans imported into the country by Joe Biden. Any individual who threatens our national security or our citizenry will be subject to removal.
Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem says authorities believe the shooting suspect was radicalized in the United States. And over the weekend, there was another arrest, but this one was in Texas. DHS Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs Tricia McLaughlin wrote on X, quote, "Just one day before the terrorist attack against our National Guard, another Afghan national who was paroled into the United States under Biden's Operation Allies Welcome was arrested for threatening to blow up a building in Fort Worth, Texas," end quote. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem joins me. Secretary, I know you feel like the rest of us do, and especially since the 2 guards last week, I mean, they're here in the city I live, making this city safer, you know, and I see them every day. Is that, you know, it's just unthinkable, is it not, that what happened to them?
It really is. They both were so young, took an oath to defend this country, volunteered to come here and help keep people safe. And Sarah's family, I know, is absolutely heartbroken. And we're glad to get an update on Andrew. We're still praying for him, hoping he can fully recover and continue to be an inspiration for all of us.
Do we not have to be a little realistic on this, on vetting these people? How many have come in under the Operation Allies Welcome, and how in the world do you vet someone's future conduct? I mean, I don't understand how Homeland Security can do that or anybody else can. I know everyone wants to point fingers right now, but how do you begin that task? I just think it's almost impossible.
Yeah, well, Greta, you asked how many people came in. We think up to 100,000 people came in under Operation Allies Welcome that may be here that we don't know necessarily who they are or why they came to this country. If they came here truly maybe for asylum, or if they were someone who had nefarious ideas on how to attack Americans or to undermine our way of life. What I would say on the vetting process is that has to happen before they ever come here. They have to be vetted before we allow them to get on a plane and come to the United States of America, so that we know what their intentions are and who they are. And in order for us to do that, I know from the Department of Homeland Security standpoint, we have to have another government and another country that cooperates with us, that shares information with us, that will help us check dates of service and collect biometric information and data. That wasn't done by Joe Biden. It wasn't done by his administration. They did a vetting process, but it wasn't thorough. They didn't look at social media platforms, and that's all of the changes that President Trump is implementing.
But is there actually the manpower for that? You say 100,000, and there's the ones who came in on Operation Allies Welcome. But I was down in Colombia at the staging ground for the Darien Gap, and this is before, after that, but before, I don't remember. But there were so many Afghans there that weren't coming in through that program. I mean, there were so many people coming into the United States, and I realize the border's shut now, but even the ones here, how do you even have the manpower to vet them?
Yeah, it's difficult. You know, when I got into this position, Greta, was a 1.5 million case backlog in asylum claims, which means that many people had applied for asylum that the Biden administration hadn't even looked at yet, hadn't even dealt with their paperwork or processed it. So we have, under the program and recruitment efforts of President Trump, started hiring new individuals in USCIS. That's the agency that does these kinds of applications. We've had an incredible response. Tens of thousands of people have applied to be Homeland Defenders, which means they want to work with us to make sure that only people can come into this country that should be here. But in the meantime, President Trump is absolutely correct to stop all asylum. Stop all paperwork, all processing, not let people come here, especially from these countries that aren't stable, that can't help us vet individuals until we know what we're doing, who we're letting into this country, and to make sure that they're properly vetted. The Biden administration completely failed. This individual who conducted this attack opened his application, and his processes and his paperwork and vetting was all done under Joe Biden, and we're not going to operate that way anymore.
With this man who's sitting in the D.C. jail or wherever he is, maybe he's still in the hospital, I don't know where he's happened, but he was already here, so he would have been. You wouldn't have caught him in a net to vet in your administration. He was already here, and it seems to me, you know, always these shootings, whether it's this one or someone shooting up a mall or a bar or anything, there's always these people are always saying things to other people, doing things before, but people don't speak up. You know, I don't believe this guy just all of a sudden got up one day and decided he was going to come to Washington and do this. He had to have been saying things to people beforehand. There had to have been red flags.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the investigation will give us all of that information. It'll continue to reveal to us exactly who he was talking to, who he was affiliated with, and all of them will be brought to justice. I will say that we believe he was radicalized here in this country after he got here, but we have to identify the tendencies of individuals who may be vulnerable to that, what we can do to make sure that we have those interviews while they're here, after they've arrived as well, and stay in touch and make sure that these individuals want to be Americans, that they love America, that they should only be here if that's what their heart is. And that just wasn't true under the Biden administration. They let millions of people come into this country that we have no idea who they are. If they were terrorists, criminals, murderers, or rapists, they let them in.
Well, there's a dirty little secret, too, about the way we left Afghanistan, because we left behind so many people that helped us. That so many we trained prosecutors to put the Taliban into prison. So then the Taliban comes into the city and opens up the prisons, and all the people that are now get out of the prison are going after the prosecutors that were doing our work. They were having all these retribution killings in Afghanistan because of the way we left. So, I mean, there's just the dirty little secret is a lot of the good people we left behind and who are getting killed now because they helped us.
It's shocking to me what the Biden administration did in Afghanistan, the way that our young men and women went there, served our country there overseas, and died, lost their lives, many of them, and then we abandoned that country, come home, abandon many Americans, if you remember, Greta, we left many Americans there as well when he pulled out, and then loaded up those aircrafts with people we didn't know who they were and just let them into the country and said, we'll vet them later. It was a train wreck, and we're still paying for the consequences of it. I don't think anybody really truly realized exactly how dangerous of a situation it was when Joe Biden left us this country and President Trump came into the White House. We're just so grateful that we have a president now that understands the real threat that this immigration problem has been.
Well, Secretary Kristi Noem, I know how hard you work. You work 24/7, 7 days a week, and it's a real heavy lift and a big responsibility. So, I appreciate what you do. Thank you very much for joining me, too.
Oh, thank you, Greta. You bet, anytime.
And today, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's former senior advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner departed for Moscow. The two are expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is peace talks between Russia and Ukraine show signs of progress. This afternoon, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said this about the peace negotiations.
Just yesterday, Sunday, I believe that was yesterday, they had very good talks with the Ukrainians in Florida, and now, of course, Special Envoy Witkoff is on his way to Russia. This is sort of the shuttle diplomacy that you've seen from this administration play out, where we speak equally with both sides. We've put points on paper. Those points have been very much refined, but as for the details, I will let the negotiators negotiate, but we do feel quite good, and we're hopeful that this war can finally come to an end.
Coming up, our outrage of the day. What happened is so unthinkable. I'm going to tell you what it is when the record continues.
Hi, I'm Katrina Ziff. I've worked on the red carpet, I've worked at Vogue magazine, and now I work at Newsmax, and I couldn't be happier because it's all about bringing the most important stories in the world directly to you.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
The Black Friday sale is on with the lowest price of the year. Order online in minutes, and your kit that treats common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Don't miss Black Friday savings. Visit urgentcarekit.com/Black Friday. That's urgentcarekit.com/Black Friday.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
Make this Christmas the year you go all in on joy.
At Balsam Hill, our annual cyber sale is finally here. Celebrate with one of our beautifully crafted lifelike trees and save up to 50% off. Start making memories at balsamhill.com.
Is a pardon coming? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is asking for a presidential pardon from corruption charges. President Trump wants Netanyahu pardoned.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon.
Okay, now some background. This is going to stun you. Netanyahu went on trial more than 5 years ago on May 24, 2020, long before October 7th. The trial was conducted while Netanyahu was also fighting Hamas, which began, of course, on October 7th, 2023, fighting that slaughter. And it has divided Israelis whether or not Netanyahu should be pardoned for the trial that began back in 2020 for corruption. Middle East correspondent Zach Anders is in Tel Aviv, where it is 11:26 p.m. Zach?
Hey, good afternoon, Greta. Yeah, the Prime Minister, with a video statement yesterday, says his legal team formally requested a pardon from Israel's President Isaac Herzog, with Netanyahu still contesting these charges as baseless. Now, the trials, as you mentioned, began in 2020 and have been slowed by COVID, multiple wars. Now, 6 years ago, the Prime Minister was indicted in the Israeli courts for alleged fraud, bribery, and breach of trust, charges that briefly brought him out of power before he stormed back and won the next election, even with these charges hanging around his neck in that election. Now, in his argument for the pardon, Netanyahu claims there were serious crimes committed when building the case against him, and that it would be better for the state of Israel for this trial to end. Here's the Prime Minister.
My personal interest was, and still is, to continue with the legal process to its end, until a full acquittal in all charges. But the security and political reality, the national interest, those demand otherwise.
The Prime Minister went further to say this trial is tearing the country apart from the inside, and that now is the time for national reconciliation. A pardon here would be unprecedented in Israel, as the trial's still ongoing. Netanyahu has not been formally convicted, however, 6 years and still no verdict. Protests outside the courthouse swelled again today. They demanded the court reach a verdict first before a pardon is considered.
We see that as, understanding that he's about to lose these trials. And this is just the beginning. Unfortunately, these are the easy cases.
Now, Israel's President Herzog releasing a statement today that he will consider the pardon and that he'll make a decision based on the good of the state of Israel and Israeli society. Now, the latest addition to this years-long saga has been President Trump pressuring for a pardon with posts on Truth Social, and most notably during the president's address to the Israeli legislature back in October. That clip you played before coming to me. President Trump also leveraging potential movement on Israeli leaders that don't align or don't comply with this political momentum here to try and get the pardon established. Now, the trial continued today, and the court announced that Prime Minister Netanyahu's testimony scheduled for tomorrow has been postponed at the Prime Minister's request for, quote, diplomatic and security matters. Now, to the south in Gaza, a first for this ceasefire, which is still holding, nearing 2 months now. A U.S. official tells me that a Hamas fighter crossed the yellow line yesterday, leaving the Hamas-controlled side of Gaza, and surrendered to the IDF. He allegedly told the Israelis that he was recently recruited by Hamas and felt remorse in doing so. Now, that same U.S. official tells me that this is the first surrender of the ceasefire, Hamas leaving, or a Hamas man leaving to come to the Israeli side of Gaza. Finally, Israeli reports today claim that a body believed to be one of the final 2 hostages still held in Gaza was located by Hamas today. However, the reports in Israel saying that the transfer to Israeli hands from Hamas to the Red Cross to the IDF, that was canceled, no reason given, and we're also told that there is no understanding right now if it actually is the body that belongs to an Israeli hostage. Again, only 2 slain hostages remain in Gaza. Greta.
Zach Anders, thank you. Professor Emeritus of Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz, joins me. Good evening, sir. And I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not an Israeli, but I must admit, after all that I have watched Prime Minister Netanyahu do for his country since October 23rd and before that, October 7th, 2023, and before that, I just, for the life of me, I don't understand why he's on trial. It seems silly when you juxtapose it, when you compare what he's done for them.
I've been advising Netanyahu for years. I am both his friend and I've been his lawyer over the years. This is the case that should never have been brought. The American system is so much better. You can't put a sitting president on trial. And the charges here are absurd, that he took a few, bottles of champagne and some cigars, and that he tried to influence the media not to tell terrible stories about his wife. That's commonplace in Israel. The idea of criminalizing those kinds of ordinary activities really shows a kind of selective prosecution. So the case never should have been brought to trial. My hope was that the judges would see that and acquit. They already have said about the most serious charge. They've told the prosecutors to drop it because there's nothing there. So I do believe that there was a substantial possibility that he might be acquitted if it goes to the end, or that he would be convicted only on a slap on the wrist. Now, the problem with a pardon is that for some it will sound like, if he accepts it or asks for it, like it's an admission of guilt. I don't think that's the case, because he has to get back to the business on hand, to see that the ceasefire works, to see that what's going on in Lebanon doesn't turn into a war, to make sure that Iran doesn't redevelop its nuclear weapons, that Yemen doesn't continue to attack. I mean, Israel's surrounded on so many sides, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has been fighting this multi-front war. He shouldn't have to be sitting in court on these, what I regard as trivial, mostly non-offenses. So I hope this case comes to an end one way or another.
If I were living in a little tiny country being attacked by terrorists from all sides, the last thing I'd want to do is the one guy who's in charge of the military to be distracted by having to go into a bomb shelter courthouse every once in a while where 5.5 years to get testimony. I'd want him to concentrate on that, but that's just me. Anyway, let me ask you about Harvard Club in New York and your book party. What happened there?
Well, Harvard had invited me to do the launch of my book, The Preventive State. And then a couple of Yentas, gossips, and people who didn't like me because they didn't like who I represented, pressured the Harvard Club to cancel me. So without even notifying me, they sent out notices saying that it was postponed because of scheduling problems. They lied. They never tried. And they said they would try to reschedule. They never tried to reschedule. I'm not the only person who has been canceled by clubs. My wife also was canceled by a feminist club that claims to be supportive of women's ability to be on their own. And they denied her membership in the club solely on the ground that she married me and that I defended Donald Trump. And so what we're seeing are these private clubs are just ganging up on anybody who they perceive to be supportive of Donald Trump. And, it's not like universities. The president can't come after these clubs. I wish he could. And I wish he would do something about the Harvard Club and his club that turned down my wife. But the idea that you go after people because of who they represented, it's pure McCarthyism. And that's what it is.
Okay, let me just ask you this. I want to clear something up. This is not Harvard University. This is a club of people who went to Harvard or have some relationship to Harvard, right? Who walked away with that great degree on free speech. Have a great respect.
Thinks it's a Harvard club. I didn't join it when I first became a member of the faculty. I could have, because it didn't allow in women. And then they required women to go in the back door. It was absurd. And they have a history of keeping out Jews and blacks. These clubs are outrageous. And, people belong to the club mostly because they can keep other people out. And the idea, though, that these two clubs, the Harvard Club and this club that my wife won't let me mention its name, that excluded her solely because she was married to me, are a disgrace. And I would hope that people would take that seriously and stop belonging to these clubs. They are not the American way.
Well, I'm going to call her someday and see if I can get that name of the club out of her, find out who it is. Professor Alan Dershowitz, as always, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And it is time for our Outrage of the Day alert. Today's outrage will actually leave your head spinning. Prosecutors in the Netherlands say a Muslim father and her 2 Muslim sons tied up and drowned the father's teenage daughter. Why? And you might want to sit down for this answer. Because the teenage girl refused to wear a headscarf and was talking to males while using social media. Pretty outrageous, isn't it? Well, there's more. Officials say after the drowning, the murder, the cowardly father then fled to Syria, and you might want to sit down for the again. He did that to leave his sons to take the blame for the murder of their sister. A verdict is expected next month. Coming up, remember Luigi Mangione? He was back in court today, and what is he requesting? And, of course, the spectacle happening outside the court. That when the record continues.
Hi, I'm Charlotte McBride. I love working at Newsmax because every day we bring you honest reporting with real conversations, no spin. We're not telling you how to think. We're just giving you the facts and letting you decide what's best for you and your family.
You can't go out there. You'll never make it.
But I reckon I got to. I'm 45. It's time to screen for colon cancer.
Will I ever see you again?
I love you. Also, I'm just going to the porch.
I knew that.
It's true. The Cologuard test comes to you.
Just ask your provider or request online.
That way you can screen for colon cancer on your terms. It's effective and non-invasive.
False positive and negative results may occur. It is not for those at high risk. Skip the drama. Ask your provider or request Cologuard online.
An official message from Medicare.
Medicare plans change from one year to the next. And this year, it's important for you to review your current coverage and compare all your options during Medicare open enrollment. Compare health plans. Compare drug coverage. Compare costs. See if you can save. And make sure your drugs are covered. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Compare plans now at Medicare.gov.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Wade Allen Root, the national TV and radio host known as the MAGA warrior and the capitalist evangelist. This presidency is ushering in the golden age of prosperity, and it's all built around making America the energy capital of the world. Enter Lost Soldier Oil and Gas. It took 40 years to piece together this 40,000-acre giant gas discovery. It's estimated to contain up to 6 trillion cubic feet of gas, with a management forecast projecting the first 25 wells alone to produce 400 million cubic feet per day of natural gas. This is how we power the AI future of America with clean natural gas. Headed by oil and gas legend Mark Bruner, whose previous public companies delivered spectacular returns for investors. At their peaks, Pedico Energy grew about 100 to 1 for investors. Ultra Petroleum grew about 1,000 to 1 for investors. To learn more about Lost Soldier Oil and Gas, scan the QR code on the screen or go to lostsoldier.com. That's lostsoldier.com.
I'm a martial artist, a skydiver, a pilot, and all of them require your feet to work. Get up in the morning and it felt like I was standing on marbles on my heel. When I went into the Good Feet store, the fitting was personalized. It was all about me. You put in the arch supports and your day becomes better and the sun shines, the unicorns run by, and it's a good life. I'm Randy and that's my Good Feet story.
See for yourself with a free personalized arch support fitting at the Good Feet store.
From drained investment accounts and stolen tax returns to lost wages and hiring lawyers, identity theft can cost you more than you might think. That's why only LifeLock offers the $1 Million Protection Package, which covers stolen funds, experts and lawyers, and out-of-pocket expenses up to $3 million in total. Don't face the high cost of identity theft alone. Protect your future and finances with LifeLock. Join today.
Not again.
Your cold is coming! Your cold is coming!
Thanks, Revere.
We really need to keep Zycam in the house.
Only if you want to shorten your cold. When you feel a cold coming, shorten it with Zycam.
Yes, an update on a case we've been following. Today, Luigi Mangione was back in court in New York. The accused assassin of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson asked the judge to toss evidence from his arrest. The evidence that he wants tossed includes his diary entries. The prosecutors insist those entries prove his motive. Mangione's defense team also claimed Mangione's constitutional rights were violated when police questioned him and searched his bag without a warrant. Now, that was inside the courtroom. Outside the courtroom, there was a bit of a circus. There were supporters dressed in Luigi costumes and some supporters wearing free Luigi shirts. A court setback also for President Trump. Today, his former attorney, Alina Habba, was disqualified as New Jersey's top federal prosecutor. The decision from the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit is unanimous. Habba had not been approved and confirmed by the Senate. The challenge to Habba came after 3 men facing criminal charges questioned the validity of Habba's appointment. The White House could petition the Supreme Court to consider this matter. The Trump administration and Habba have not responded to requests for comment about it. This appellate decision in the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit follows the disqualification of Lindsay Halligan in the Eastern District of Virginia. Lindsay Halligan obtained a grand jury indictment against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Those indictments now have been dismissed. It's expected the Trump administration will appeal the dismissal of Comey's indictment, but simply re-indict James since the statute of limitations has not run on her case. Professor at Yale Law School Jed Rubenfeld joins me. Good evening, sir. And why is it that the Court of Appeals, the Third Circuit, says Alina Habba cannot serve in that capacity as U.S. Attorney in New Jersey?
Well, you know what's happening. You just said it. You were right. There's a statute that says how long somebody can serve as an interim United States attorney. So she was appointed as an interim U.S. attorney, and that statute gives a person 120 days to serve. Her 120 days elapsed, and at that point, the district court appointed the second in command there to serve in her place. And then the administration tried to reappoint her, but that's their problem. The district court had already appointed an interim attorney, and according to some interpretations of this statute, you can't do a second interim U.S. attorney after the first one. The president only gets one shot.
In the first 100-day period where she was interim attorney, was she appointed by the president, and did her confirmation proceedings start in the U.S. Senate while she was the interim?
Yeah, as you may remember, Trump put her up for full Senate confirmation, but she got blocked. And, I'm not totally clear how that happened or why, but she got blocked. She never even got to come up for a full Senate vote. Her nomination was blocked, so she was never confirmed. On the other hand, she was never rejected either, so she was not confirmed or rejected. The statute says if somebody's been rejected by the Senate, then the president cannot put that person up as an interim U.S. attorney. But she wasn't rejected; she was just blocked. And the problem is she served 120-day term, and under the interpretation of this statute that was used by the same judge that threw out interim U.S. Attorney Halligan, the president only gets one shot. And, he used it. And according to this interpretation of that statute, that's it.
Well, the thing that I don't like is, and this also includes cabinet positions and also ambassadors around the world, is that the Senate really, there's so much bureaucratic red tape and so many rules that the Senate can strangle any president's attempt to fill those jobs. Oftentimes we have ambassadorships at very important posts around the world where we don't have places where we don't even have ambassadors because we can't get the ambassadors confirmed because the Senate doesn't do it because one person blocks it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's a real problem. And of course, if the president doesn't control 60 votes in the Senate, and whoever does, it's going to be tough to get your nominations through. So they hold up appointments for political leverage. They can do that very successfully for a while. And, the administration ends up not being staffed. But, if we turn to the question of can the administration re-indict people, that's what everybody wants to know. And as you were saying in your intro, it's pretty clear they can re-indict Letitia James. Now, some folks are saying that, and we're talking about Halligan now, that in the Eastern District of Virginia, they can't re-indict Comey because people are saying the statute of limitations is run. Once it's run, they say can't re-indict him. But it's not really true. People haven't looked at this carefully enough. There's another statute that gives the administration a 6-month window period after, if an initial indictment was handed down within the limitations period, then if that indictment is dismissed, the administration gets 6 more months to file a new one. So Comey is not off the hook, not yet, not by a long shot.
But you have to admit that, the administration was a little bit slow on the uptake on that one because they did wait to the last day to indict Comey when the statute had run, when this administration's been in office since January 20th. Of course, there was a U.S. attorney, an interim U.S. attorney who declined to prosecute Comey. But they did have quite a long time to try to fix this.
They had time, but you're exactly right. What happened was that the interim U.S. attorney first appointed for the Eastern District of Virginia refused to indict. He said, look, I don't think there's enough evidence. And in fact, although he technically resigned, the reports are that he was pushed out because he wouldn't indict Comey, wouldn't indict Letitia James. And, so they had time, but also, the prosecutors, the first prosecutor said, nope, I'm not doing it. And so when Halligan came in at the last second, she rushed out an indictment. And, I'll be honest, the indictment of Comey is extremely, it's thin, it's hasty, it's not well drafted, it's not well executed. The whole thing was not done well. I'll be honest with you, the whole thing was botched. And they do have some extra time now, but they're hoist on their own petard here. They botched the job, and now they're getting called for it.
Professor Jed Rubenfeld at Yale. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Coming up, online shoppers just smashed a new Black Friday record. How much did they spend and what did they buy? That when the record continues.
Think of all the places that could expose you to identity theft. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points per second and quickly alerts you if we detect any suspicious activity, like changes to your investment accounts, home title, or new loans in your name. All through text, phone, email, or the LifeLock app. Get the alerts that could make all the difference. LifeLock, for the threats you can't control.
What do you say? I love you, and I'm alive. Eric was a 50 cal gunner. He wanted to help his fellow soldiers, and he served a total of 4 years.
What?
Twice, yeah, he did two tours in Iraq. He was hit by an armor-piercing round, right above his right ear, exited above his left ear.
They served with honor, and now it's our turn to help them. Join Wounded Warrior Project. Call or go online with your gift of just $19 a month to help America's injured warriors get the life-changing care they need.
Eric wanted a family so bad. That's the hardest thing when he looks at me and he says, when am I going to get married? He's so severely injured, he can't have his own kids. And he's not mad about it, but he's sad sometimes.
He's been through a tough life, and he's come through smiling.
Warriors like Eric need to know that we won't leave them behind. Our donors help us provide life-changing programs and services at no cost to warriors. Please call or go online with your gift of $19 a month, and we'll send you this blanket honoring the 250th anniversary of American independence and freedom.
Wounded Warrior Project, they have not forgotten the sacrifice that our family did.
They still know we're here. That means so much to me, because this is never over.
All the donors who keep believing in Eric, I can't put in words how much it means to him.
Thank you, he says.
The need is urgent. Please give a little to those who gave so much for us.
Radical jihadists are not done. Iran promises death to America. They've built sleeper terror cells in the U.S. They support terror groups out to destroy Israel, including Hamas, whose founding charter calls for Islam to dominate the world.
The young people have been educated to believe that the most sacred thing they do is stab a Christian in the heart.
The only democracy in the Middle East that supports religious freedom is Israel. Standing for freedom, not terror.
The holiday shopping spring season is in full swing. According to Adobe Analytics this year, Black Friday online sales hit a record $11.8 billion. That's up 9.1% over last year. So what were United States shoppers so busy buying this year? Well, hot sellers on Black Friday included Lego sets, Pokemon cards, Apple AirPods, and KitchenAid mixers. Now my question, of course, is how much did people save? No one is telling us that. And as the holiday season approaches, Samaritan's Purse is gearing up for its spectacular annual Operation Christmas Child. President and CEO of Samaritan's Purse and President and CEO of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, Reverend Franklin Graham, joins me. Good afternoon, sir. And tell me, just give me some idea of how many millions of boxes, Christmas presents, has Operation Christmas Child given out over its time, if you know?
Well, first of all, 12.6 million this year. We started in 1993 with 11,000, and it's over 230 million shoeboxes, Greta. So it's something God has done. It's incredible. I mean, just God has done it.
And where do these Christmas boxes go?
There's about 130 different countries around the world. We've got an incredible distribution network of churches. In Haiti, for instance, we've got in Jamaica, we have 250 churches down there. We're taking in about 25,000 shoeboxes. Those 250 churches will be responsible for taking those shoeboxes and giving them to the children that have been devastated by this hurricane that just smashed into them just about a month and a half ago. So it's all over the world. It's the churches giving out these boxes, and we do it in Jesus' name. We want the children to know that God hasn't forgotten them, Greta. He loves them. He cares for them. And so many children, especially you take like Ukraine, where we'll have about 250,000 boxes this year. The children there don't understand the problems of the world. All they know is that they're being bombed, their families are being killed, their schoolmates are being killed. And to be able to give a gift and just let them know that we love them, God loves them, and that they get a gift. And so many kids have never had a gift, and they get a gift, and they open it up, and they don't realize that everything in the box is theirs. Some children open up a box and they'll just take one thing out and then close the lid and hand it back. No, you don't have to hand it back. That's all yours. And the smiles and the joys and the giggles, and of course you and your husband John, you've seen it, Greta. It's an incredible thing that God does with these boxes. And it opens up a great opportunity for us as Christians to share God's love with them.
I mean, you and I and John, I remember in Iraq when we were in a church that ISIS had burned down, and we stepped on we saw an Operation Christmas Child box, and I'm going to go to Jamaica this weekend and distribute some. And so it is all over the world. It's amazing. People are packing them right now. We encourage people to pack them. But that's not all you're busy doing right now. Tell me about the Helene rebuild, because it's another project that's ongoing right now.
Yeah. Well, we're still working as a result of the hurricane that struck here at Helene. And there was a couple that got they fell through the cracks. And I saw this on a local news broadcast, this couple that had just given up hope. They had applied for insurance, and the insurance wouldn't give them anything. And FEMA did come through with $49,000 and gave them, I think, $9,000 for the contents. But FEMA's not there to rebuild your house. They're just there to help you kind of get going. And so FEMA did its job, but unfortunately the insurance companies didn't. And we just, we were able to come in. I saw the story where they gave up hope. I told our team, we're going to build them a home. And they went down there and built them a home. And we dedicated a day. This was just 5 months. We did from July when I heard about it. And here it is, December 1st. They've got a nice, beautiful 2-bedroom home. They're in Minneapolis, North Carolina. Not Minnesota, Minneapolis, North Carolina.
Minneapolis, North Carolina. Anyway, well, congratulations. A house in 4 months. Samaritan's presence all over the world. People are packing it right now. Reverend Franklin Graham, as always, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
Coming up, as a Packers shareholder, you know, I'm not a fan of a Chicago Bear, but I did find one exception. That's next when the record continues.